Welcome to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. Today is episode 45 and I'm here with Gillian. Gillian, you look like you're in a motel room.
I am yet again in a motel room. I'm in Adelaide for the Adelaide show and a lot of other things, mainly meetings that are pretty boring. Already been to one function so far with the Ag Minister of South Australia and all associated dignitaries. So that was why I've still, if you've got the YouTube, I've got the full face of makeup on still. I only just got home not that long ago. Had to put off recording the podcast for 10 minutes so I could shovel some actual food, not canapes, into my face. So that's where we are. You look like you are in the laundry again, Katja. Is the washing finished yet?
The washing has finished. For those who have been long-time listeners, you'll know that I record out of my linen cupboard, which is just off my laundry. So sometimes we need to wait for the machine to finish so that we can jump into actually discussing without some odd background sounds from my washing machine.
Hi, welcome to Absolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are absolutely fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode. Sounds like we're starting with some chit chat. So apart from tonight's activities, what else have you been up to this week?
Oh, not a lot really. Just basically getting ready to come down here, and we just finished mustering and trucking cattle. I didn't have to do anything for that. We had a full complement of other participants, so I got to stay home and do my normal thing, which is cleaning up and everything after this home visit from the teachers, which was a lovely little thing for Eleanor, our youngest girl. So she got two teachers to come and visit and spend a day and a half with her. They got to see how she lives and where her schoolroom is and do some one-on-one work with her. So that was lots of fun.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we even convinced the long-term vegetarian teacher to have a little tiny bit of taste of steak. So
there you go.
No pressure. But he said it's there if you'd like to try some. You're more than welcome to. And she said, I would like to eat some more red meat. And she tried some. So that was lovely.
Amazing. Must have been inspired by life on a cattle station.
I think for a lot of people who are vegetarian and vegan, it's that they need or want that connection to their food. They want to feel assured that the animal had a good life and a swift death. And so we home kill our meat, and we could assure her that we knew this animal for its whole born days and saw it off swiftly and treated it appropriately. So, yeah, each to their own.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful.
How's your puppy going?
Oh, the puppy is going so well. He's so smart. He's so good around the kids as well. So a lot of puppies usually do a lot of nipping and a lot of biting. He doesn't do that. He can already sit and roll and he comes when he's called most of the time, probably 90% of the time, even when there's other dogs around. So I'm really, really happy with his progress at such a young age. So really happy about that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Because recall is important. I got stuck into my orchard. So if you're following me over on Instagram under the Ultimate Farm Wife, you'll see a couple of fires that I've lit the last couple of Sundays. Just little fires, but with all the pruning from my orchard and everything, it's all now starting to shoot into beautiful, beautiful blossoms. So I'm really, really excited about that. And as this episode will be going live on Friday, I'll be down in Blaney with my kiddos. My youngest, who is nearly 6, it'll be his first All Breeds National Junior Heifer Show. So he'll be not just learning from us, he's very good at home on farm with the stud cattle helping us break them in. Always has been from a very young age, but he'll actually get to do that amongst his peers and with other breeds of cattle, not just Shorthorns this weekend. So he's very excited about that.
He might see some Charolais down there, expand his world a little bit.
Hopefully he doesn't come home and want one of those.
And announce to his father, who's a Shorthorn man, I'm going to breed Charolais when I grow up.
I'll organise him work experience up at yours if that's what he wants to do.
Oh, he can come up anytime he wants. He'll be a good kid. He'll be fine. He'll motorbike him and everything.
Wonderful. Well, let's get stuck into it. So we've got a few different topics today. The first topic is furious farmers have taken aim at Jacinta Allan at a bush summit in Ballarat, resulting in the Prime Minister being chased out of town by some tractors and unhappy farmers.
It was pretty funny, actually. I watched a few clips of it. Look, not approved behaviour, but I can understand where they're coming from, to be completely honest. The transgrid link thing, I think it's just, I know everyone's focusing on that, on the land access and those, but I think this is just, it's like the straw that's broken the camel's back. Victoria, from what we hear from our listeners, is one of the most highly regulated agricultural states in Australia. The hoops they have to jump through just to do their job is incredible. Ongoing pressures, urban expansion into farmland, all those sorts of things, and they're not being supported in a way that allows them to continue to do their work and do their job. And they're angry, at the lack of consultation. They're angry at the fact that everyone else's needs seem to come before theirs. And I think they have got a right to be angry. And these bush summits, they're performative nonsense anyway. It's just travelling around the countryside so select cohort of people can talk bulk rot. So, yeah. So there goes my chance of ever being invited to one. So
I was going to say, well, funny that, because two different AgFabs sent me this article and for us to discuss this, because they were there at the Bush Summit and they gave a little report from being there. So they had a great time. They were there for a reason. They were there for a purpose. They were able to successfully do what they needed to do at the Bush Summit. They knew that everyone was angry and disappointed there, but at no point did they feel unsafe. So even though they were rallying and trying to raise their concerns and they weren't being heard, they weren't being listened to, well, if you've come to a Bush Summit to put on your show, Mr. Prime Minister and Jacinta, then why would you not listen to your constituents? Why would you not answer their questions appropriately? And why would you go to an agricultural event? It's a little bit like flashbacks from the AgriFutures Awards last year, where why would you go there and talk about what a good job you're doing to a group of people where you're not doing a great job, you're not representing them, you're not looking after them, you're not treating them with respect that they not only need but deserve, because we're feeding you, we're clothing you, and over-regulating. And one of the other things they were talking about, not just about the power lines and access to farming, where they are going to turn farmers into criminals and find them if they are going to deny people access to their farms. Biosecurity, security in general. Who are you to come onto my farm and breach all our protocols and work health and safety and just security and personal space for something we don't even want on our place?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we've had this discussion many times before. We're not anti-renewables. We're not anti-infrastructure development. There's plenty of land out there for these projects to be built that don't involve building it on prime farmland. There's plenty of land for these lines to go on that are already existing corridors for rail and road and all those sorts of things where they can be built not over people's paddocks. But it seems to me that it's the profits to these development companies and to these power companies gets put before anything else when It should be the other way around. You know, you cannot put the needs of a corporation ahead of those of the individuals who actually own the land where they want to build that stuff. And, you know, I've had a few discussions in inverted commas with people online who say, oh, these landholders are being very selfish. It's for the greater good. It's for all of this. It's for all of that. No one said that they had to build those projects there, and they've built them without thinking where the transmission lines are going to go. Like, it's not that they don't want the development to happen, but they want the choice with what happens to their own land. And I've said there's plenty of rubbish country from to build, and Port Augusta is a perfect example. There's a lot of wind turbines and solar developments around the country around Port Augusta. It's not fit for anything else. It is very marginal country at the best of times. So build it there. Build more transmission lines that do go along road and rail corridors that already exist and have already been cleared, and just don't traipse all over people's farms to do it. But yeah, profits get put before people at all times, it appears.
I think another hot topic there over the Bush Summit was also the fire levy. So I'm not sure what the update on the fire levy is at the moment. I have not checked back in on it, but the fact that there was plenty of farmers who are volunteer firefighters who've covered the fire levy before, so head back into the archives and have a look at that on what we said there. But the fact that they're going to start losing all their volunteers because they're volunteers, they're not paid, they're rural people just wanting to farm and get along with their day, and if they're going to have to pay additional money to volunteer and to farm, then why would they turn up and help others when they're being charged for it?
Yeah, it literally makes no sense. And I do know that the balancing the books of a state is an incredibly challenging thing, but putting those cost imposts on the people who are providing the service and risking their own lives, that is not a smart way to go about it. It's very disrespectful to make those people carry the burden of paying for that service that they are then forced to provide as a volunteer. So yeah, I don't think that's a great plan. They need to go back to the drawing board on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we did send through another piece, which is
the border security boost, biosecurity boost. About time that we saw some actual spending on that.
I did think it was very funny the way the article was written. So thank you, AgFabs, for sending this one in as well. It is another good feel story that has been rolled out. It was about increasing border security through the additional add of some more sniffer dogs. So it's fantastic that they are bringing in additions like that. But I think if they're going to spend money on bringing in the dogs and bringing in extra staff and spending extra money, then they also need to be actually fining and discipline people who are putting our biosecurity at risk.
Yeah, and realistically, there's a limit to how much a handler and a dog can do in a day. The dogs get fatigued. Dogs take a long time to train. And they are very, very good at what they do. But the sheer volume of stuff that is coming into Australia through our ports, through our airports, domestic, personal travellers, bulk freight, postage systems, like there are not enough dogs and handlers in the world to adequately monitor that. And you're right, it is a bit of a feel-good story, and it's that frontline, visible stuff. Oh yeah, we can see the people out there with the dogs, sniffing, so we feel very safe and protected. But realistically, there is still a huge volume of stuff that goes undetected, unchecked, simply because of the amount of stuff that comes into Australia. So yeah, more investment is required. Like, obviously, it's really welcome to see that they are taking it seriously, but it's a drop in the ocean compared to what actually needs to happen.
I did wonder whether it was their PR department getting on the front foot after a couple of people were busted bringing in things into the country that they shouldn't have, and they got off with just a slap on the wrist rather than actually a fine or jail time like they should have done.
Yeah, it does feel very much like an announcement made to sort of placate those people who will have been putting pressure on on the government to do something. And then the government said, well, look at what we've done. We've employed more handlers and dogs, which isn't the answer. It's one part of a very large puzzle that they're not willing to pay for. So, yeah, they need to lift their game.
Gillian, what would you like to see them spend some of those dollars that they've put down towards that?
Realistically, they need to raise more dollars, because that's what's going to get things. And they need to, like you said, that when people are found to be importing serious quantities of prohibited substances into Australia, they need to be jailed, they need to be fined, it needs to be treated appropriately. You can't just say, oh, don't do that, that's a very bad thing to do, and send them away. Because they need to be made an example of, and they need to make it so people think twice. It's as dangerous as drugs, bringing in things that haven't been through our biosecurity systems. It is as dangerous as drugs, because it will devastate industries and families' lives, and our food supply and our native animals, and all of those sorts of things are all at risk. So take it as seriously as drug smuggling.
I absolutely agree. And if they want to work on revenue raising rather than just putting out the dollars themselves, you start handing out those big hefty fines, you're soon going to have more revenue, more budget to be able to do the job that needs to be done.
Yep, most definitely.
So Gillian, that takes us to the mid of our episode, and this part of the episode is sponsored by Farm Table. So thank you, Farm Table. Farm Table is a proud independent Australian agricultural knowledge platform, bringing together the most relevant and curated agricultural resources from around the globe. More than that, Farm Table supports industry collaboration, peer-to-peer networking, and functions to build the capacity of individuals and organisations across the entire Australian ag supply chain. With over 3,000 resources, the latest agricultural events, funding opportunities, grants, micro courses and workshops, all in one location, Farm Table makes it easier to find the information you need.
Some questions.
We do have some questions. So
we apologise in advance, or not in advance, we apologise again for being complete amateur, disorganised people, because we do have quite a bit on individually. We both received the question and read it and cannot find it, and it's completely gone. We have a vague recollection that one of our listeners sent us in a question asking about the skepticism around data sets and how the data is collected and how the data is used, and whether data is accurate and whether data can be manipulated to suit individuals or departments' own purposes. And all of that is true. There's an old saying, lies, damned lies, and statistics. And I think when you look at different data sets and how they're being interpreted and then policies being made from them, there is a massive opportunity there for people with certain agendas to present numbers in a certain way to reflect or support their ideals. We need to be cautious, though, because we can't just say, oh, you've just cherry-picked the data, because everyone does it. Every single sector, every single political party, they will cherry-pick data to support their own ways. And there's people doing it to prop up their own jobs, and there's people doing it because it's an ideological choice and they want to prove a point and all that sort of stuff. So we can't start ignoring the data either, because that just puts us into this whole big cohort of everyone who's manipulating. And so, yeah, it is a tricky one. What do you do with that data, and how do you use it, and who's using it? So my advice would be to interrogate any data set with skepticism. And not everyone has the capacity, and I certainly do not have the capacity to interrogate data, like large amounts of data, and withdraw my own conclusions. But if something doesn't seem right, look at a few more sources, speak to a few more people, reputable people, not lunatics on the internet. So don't ask our opinion. Yeah, and just take everything you read and see and hear with a grain of salt. To be honest, it can be a set of numbers is one thing, but then you have to make that data tell a story, and that's where a lot of people shine, is utilising those raw facts to support certain positions.
I think if you really want to get into data and you really want to know, what it is that whether it is truly what they are speaking about, then you've got to read the research yourself. You've got to look at the data yourself. And with a lot of research programs and things like that, especially if they're being done by public corporations, those reports will be available for you to read. Not all the data will be available, but some of it will be available. So if you're skeptical about data, if you're skeptical about what's being spoken about, you really need to do the research yourself. You really need to deep dive yourself. But I think the most important thing as well, when we're collecting data and when we're doing different things, if you remember in high school when we were talking about like science and you go to do a science experiment, or in uni when you do a psychology assessment or anything like that, you've got a question, you've got a hypothesis, and then you've either got to prove it or disprove it or collect and assess the data for whatever your point is that you're trying to do, whatever it is your aim is. So the other thing we've got to look at is, okay, was this data collected for this purpose, or are they using this data for a different purpose? Because that will skew the data as well. It'll skew the outcome. And so, yes, answering the question, yes, skepticism in data. Be skeptical. Do the deep dives, especially if it's important to you, if it's important to industry, and if it's important to understand the greater context rather than just absorbing what the media and the politicians are trying to tell us and what they're trying to use to back that up. Because a lot of the time in their statements, they will use a lot of part truths. They will use part of the data set to be able to back them up. But that is not always the big picture. It's not always what is the data was actually meant to prove or to do. So I hope that answers. We've both done like two different sides of that.
Yeah. And definitely there is access to scientific papers and those sorts of things. Most of them are published. Some of them are linked. You can get them through your library and all that sort of stuff if you're that keen. But yeah, just don't blindly take, if it doesn't sit right with you, don't blindly take someone else's word, and ask questions, be curious, learn new things, all of that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Gillian, I did get a question over on my socials as well when I shared our very groovy AgFab caps and shirts that will be coming up, whether or not we were going to do a pre-sale, because we did mention in a previous episode that we will need a certain volume of items to be purchased first to be able to make the cost what we can do to make it affordable. So the question was, are we going to do a pre-order and how can they get the link to do it?
Right. So, bit of an update on the merchandise. When I put up our mock-ups and those sorts of things, another rural woman got onto me and she said, hey, I have a company that makes hats and T-shirts. Can I give you a price? And she also has a part of a thing where we can set up a shop and she'll print it and everything and do everything on our behalf and send it out. So nothing just has to come to my house and then sits in my cupboard for 3 days, months, weeks, whatever, while I figure out how to organize it. So I'm talking to her about doing that. So it'll be a very streamlined process. It should be much cheaper because, she's a one-man band and we want to support rural women. So I'm still talking to her about that. And thank you very much to reaching out to me and saying, hey, I can help you with this, because wading through all the different quotes and stuff has been a bit of a nightmare, but fingers crossed, end of September, we'll have something up and running where you can just, like any other normal shop, go on the website, order it, and it will come along in the post, and it'll be reasonably priced. So, that's what we're hoping to do.
Perfect. Love that very, very much. And if you are wanting to see another picture of the Pater merchandise which is coming up, then you can either check out our socials, either on the AgFab page, or you can find Gillian.
Station Life on Instagram. But look for Katja, Ultimate Farm Wife, or AgFabs. That's how you'll find us.
You'll also get to see a sneak peek in the newsletter, which will be going out. It goes out once a month. The link is in the show notes if you want to jump on that newsletter. It's a great way to summarize what we've been discussing on the episodes for the month.
Yep, perfect.
The topic 3, the federal government announces an additional $1 billion of farm drought loans and commitments to continue the scheme beyond 2026. Gillian, what are we thinking?
Devil will be in the detail, as it always is. The commitment to keep the scheme going past 2026 obviously is welcome. But it's sort of like, on one hand, they've said, here's an extra $1 billion to add to this facility. And on the other hand, and they've said, oh, now guess what? We're going to expand the criteria for accessing these, and it's going to be slow-moving ecological disasters, which I think will be very interesting because that's deliberately targeted the algal bloom in South Australia, which is fine because the fisher people have been, and people who do aquaculture have been severely impacted by that, and they should have access to the same sort of support as land agriculture does. But that then plays into the drought agreement. So they don't really... Is a slow-moving ecological disaster, is that a drought? Because that's how I would qualify a drought. Mm-hmm. And that's why, it'll be very interesting to see once all the regulations and everything have been drawn up and released, how they're planning to sort of administer this sort of thing. And they still haven't delivered what we asked for. We asked for very low or no interest loans for drought recovery, specifically for drought recovery. And if you're dealing with the RIC at the moment, interest rates are on par with a commercial lender. So it's a lot of extra hoops to jump through when you could probably just go to your existing lender and say, hey, I need more money. So, yeah, that's the facility that industry Australia-wide has been begging for still hasn't been delivered. But I am going to the exclusive invitation-only drought forum in Gawler next week, which is being facilitated by the federal government and DAF, so Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, or however that's supposed to go. So fingers crossed we are getting an announcement, but I'm not overly confident, but it would be nice for it to happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm very glad that they're committing extra dollars to it. I do want them to take it a little bit more seriously and really help grassroots farmers, because I don't want to see additional fees spent on hobby farmers like some of the other non-for-profits have done in the future, where you've got, less than 100 acres, you've got a tiny herd, or you've got some horses and some things like that. Like, let's actually help the agricultural body that is feeding and clothing the country. So I'd love to see what the detail is on that, and hopefully they do. So keep us updated on the outcome of that event.
Yes, that'll be, I've seen the agenda. It's going to be riveting. Lots of very exciting talks. I can't wait.
All you need is something to make your night, Gillian. And hopefully it's better than the canapes they were serving tonight, so you don't come home hungry.
Again, look, I go to these things and I can never identify what it is that I'm eating. So tonight, right, I had a thing, and it was a piece of toast, like a little finger-sized piece of toast, and a piece of steak. I could recognise those two things. And then something green, like a pasty-looking thing, and a small yellow blob, right? So the green could have been anything. Could have been wasabi, could have been avocado, could have been, I don't know what else. Shoved it in my mouth. It turns out it was pureed peas. So that wasn't too bad. What the yellow thing was, I don't know. I think it could have been like a capsicum puree or something. Yeah, I'm sick of not being able to identify these foods and what it is that they're feeding me at these things, because I'm not a very adventurous eater. And there's nothing worse than having to shove something in your gob and then it's revolting and you want to spit it out, but you can't because there's people all around you and they're trying to talk to you, and you just have to suck it up and swallow it. And yeah.
Are they telling you what it is?
No, because the wait staff, at a lot of these events, you can ask the wait staff what's in there, and they have to tell you because of allergies and those sorts of things. But I snagged this thing off this tray because speeches were about to start and I was ravenously hungry and I thought I need to eat something. But yeah, and it was a very odd type function. It was a very small, intimate group of people. It was more like a networking event. And so they didn't have the same sort of people circulating with trays. It was just it was interestingly different.
Let's go into our last topic for tonight, which is a bit of a fun one. It was sent through by a fellow AgFab who could not stop laughing. The 7 News in Melbourne covered that a semi-load full of steak caught on fire. And, devastating that wasn't going to, that truckload wasn't going to get to its final destination. But instead of reporting more about what caused the fire and where the truck was going and will that increase prices, or sorry to the farmer who grew the beef and sorry to the abattoir which butchered and packaged the meat, because that might impact whether or not they get paid because the final product is not reaching its final destination. Instead of focusing on that side, what they did focus on was the poor first responder, the fire person who was it a vegetarian or a vegan? I can't remember, but they focused on, imagine being the first responder to that fire, not eating meat and turning up and going, oh my gosh, it's a meat truck on fire. I think that would have smelled delicious. Apart from probably the plastic, but
it's very interesting. I used to be an ambulance officer, and I have attended a vehicle accident where the vehicle struck a horse and then caught on fire. And I can tell you that vehicle mixed with flesh, burning flesh, is not a great smell at all. But honestly, what's a vegan/vegetarian doing being in that sort of role? Because I don't know, like, there's so much. If you're anti-bloodshed or those sorts of things, you are going to come across so much of that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, honestly. And I know it's not like, there are some reasonable vegans/vegetarians out there who, are not, they're living their life, they're just doing their thing. But then there's people who make it everyone else's problem that they've chosen to have that diet. Like, come on. If I had chosen that particular, like, you're not going to, like, why didn't they say, oh, well, the first person who turned up was the carnivore only diet and they were in tears that, all their food is on, like, it's just, why are we focusing on what people eat and what they do? And yeah, crazy. But that's the media for you, looking for an angle, looking for something, a hook to get people on there.
I also want to give a shout out to one of our AgFabs who sent in some incredible footage about a pig chasing, I can't quite work out if it's a lamb or a baby goat, but they're talking about the actual devastation that wild pigs cause in rural and remote areas, on farms, on stations, and it's just incredible to watch this pig chase this animal down, because it's footage that people don't often see, that we don't actually often have access to, particularly through mainstream media, when we're talking about the devastation and why we need to eradicate these animals in these areas. So we'll try and get that up on the socials as well.
Yeah. And I grew up in northwest Queensland. We had a big feral pig problem. Pigs, and you've got a lot of them where you are in New South Wales too. Pigs are, they're not Charlotte's Web pigs. I can guarantee you of that. They are savage, nasty, killing machines, and they eat lambs and they eat animals that are like stuck in mud and all that sort of stuff. They attack dogs, they attack humans. They are, they are not your pink pigs that you see in farmyards. They are shocking. Mm-hmm. And they dig things up, and they are revolting, disease-carrying monsters. So let's get rid of them all. Every feral pig's got to go.
Yeah, 100% agree. I also had another AgFab send through this week because I commented on their canola crop, and they said, can you please mention again, I know you mentioned this last season, but please mention, people, do not get out of your car and walk through somebody else's canola crop. It is not for your purposes of taking a photo. Biosecurity again, common sense, private property, don't do it. Canola also smells and it's scratchy.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, canola, from a distance, but up close and it's just, don't go into other people's paddocks, please. You can get plenty of nice shots on the side of the road. You do not need to be standing in amongst the canola, spreading your pathogens and trampling their things and trespassing and breaking the law. Don't do that.
Mhm.
Just don't do that.
That's all for me this week.
That's all for me this week. I think when we're recording next week, I think will be the first day of the Drought Forum. So I might have something to report, but a lot of these government things you're told not to report anything until the official press release comes out. So we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed. There's something positive to come out of it.
Absolutely. We'll look forward to our next chat, and I'll be able to give you a debrief on how the first Heifer show has gone for my little boy. So we'll
How
talk to
many
you.
blue ribbons he's going to bring home?
We shall see. It's in his blood.
And we'll have an update on the goat showing. The goat's name is Kevin. If anyone's wondering, I'll try and get a picture of Kevin and put it up. He's on loan from a goat stud. So, yeah.
Love that very much. Thanks, Fabs, for listening in. And please continue sending us your reels, research, and information. And if you are on socials, please hit us up. We love hearing from you in the comments section, and we love engaging with you online. Until next week, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.